Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. This video is just to kind of shout out that I got the fully complete on hard, classic hard. And so the last piece of the puzzle was to finish all the jobs. Now, it's always been my goal, if you will, to why do I always want to go to the shop instead? It's the jobs that I want to go to. It's always been my goal to try to create a make anything machine that would do all of the jobs on a particular difficulty level. And I failed, but I also succeeded. So, in the sense that I failed, I couldn't make one make anything machine make every single shape on the job menu, but I could create two make anything machines that, when combined, would make anything on the job menu. So, again, this is classic hard, and I've just recently completed all of the remaining jobs that require factory shapes, and that, when combined with the crystals and pins, even the crystal breakers here, and the support swapping and all that stuff, I finally created, between the two make anything machines, they can make any shape in the job menu. So with that, I have completed the hard. Um, Basically, I've completed everything on hard level now, and the between the milestones, the jobs, the shop, everything in the shop's good too. Um, the trades, done all the trades. There's really not a lot to do on here other than to just make them. There, since I'm playing on the classic level, and then of course the operator. So this is kind of the at a glance. The other make anything machines, basically two versions of the make anything machines, are cranking out the operator, random operator 0, random operator 1, and they haven't been stumped in a while. I don't think they will get stumped on classic hard. So how did I finish up those jobs? Let's take a look at it real quick, because with the factory shapes, that required some redo. It starts out here with my factory shape farm. I made this a while back for milestone usage, but it creates a surplus, and so I was able to use that surplus to fulfill the needs of the make anything machines for the job menu. So this is not a deep dive into the factory shapes, but you can kind of get a look at how I've created each one of the shapes. If you want more detail on these factory machines, that's fine. These are basically just stackers and painters, okay? And then the actual factories themselves. And then for the secondary colors, it's just more of the same, and on to the last ones. Okay, so this is the production chain that creates all of the factory shapes. And once those factory shapes are made, then they're all put on a train to take them to the various farms that make the milestones. But for the relevance to this video, I've siphoned off a train load of them, and I've brought it over here to the make anything machine farm that I've got going over here. Um, and the first one that I wanted to do is the quad based one, because the quad based one is probably the easiest to feed, and it also makes the most variety of shapes, although it does have its blind spots. So um, having said that, once the train brings all the shapes over here, before I zoom in too much, I will just say that my make anything machines require single quads in the northeast quadrant as inputs, and then they get assembled and constructed as necessary. So my shape farm for the factory shapes puts out entire shapes. So the first step is to break them into quads, and that gets messy really quick. So you're talking about a lot of shapes, especially if you're not willing to throw them away. So to do that, I'll zoom in a little bit here so you can see all the different factory shapes are being delivered. Now there's quite the backlog because I've basically made all the shapes I need to make right now, and this is just kind of a summary. But you see they're all being delivered here, 3 levels deep, full shapes. And so each one of those, now from the side view, you can kind of see that there's 3 tiers of these. So there's basically 9 of these assemblers. There's really 10, but I'll get to that in a minute. And so let me toggle the visibility here. We'll go down to the very bottom. So what happens is these are standard taker parters, what do you call them, disassemblers, and it'll take shapes in and then divide them into halves, and then those halves further get divided into quarters, rotated as necessary, divided into quarters until we have outputs on solid quarters. So that one, oh, I really would like it to stop doing that when I zoom out. Anyway, um, you have full shapes coming in, and then 4 full belts of quads coming out. And yeah, that's a bunch. So then those quads are delivered, and now each one of the factory shapes does the exact same thing, except the last one. The last one is the black and white X and Y's, if you would, not X and Y's, I forget what they're called. Anyway, they're the black and white ones, and those black and white ones have to be split apart. Now that has its own repercussions, because if you've ever tried to split apart shapes, and if you're not using enough of one, then the whole machine will stall because the other ones aren't being used. And so what that requires you to do, or at least the workaround that I found, was that when these shapes are in use, and that's what this board here is for, just to determine if any of the shapes are being required, then it will open up all the gates, let basically the floodgates go, and then if there's a stall, the preferred direction gates will chuck them into the trash. But I wanted to make sure that the only time these were open is when they're actually being used, so that you're not just throwing them away all the time, because I have milestones that are using those too, and it would probably just throw them all away eventually, and I'd start winding up not having enough. So that shape was to prevent stalls and to prevent wastage. So once all of the shapes are split up into quads, here's the next problem, and I'm going to abandon this for a second and run over to the actual Make Anything machine. So my Make Anything machines require quads. Now the factory shapes can't be painted or crystallized. They're just whatever color they are, and that's what you're stuck with. And so in order to construct a shape that's got the factory pieces in, they've got to be available to it. So how do you get basically 10 shapes on call? And then if you add in the other 4 basic shapes, now you've got 14 shapes that could possibly be in a quadrant. So what I found out to do, or how I figured this out, I really don't like when it does that. So there we go. All right, so I guess there's no way for it to know exactly what layer I want to focus on. Anyway, this is a gate structure that shows how all of the individual factory shapes are being delivered to the Make Anything machine. So we've got 4, 8, and then 10. Now, it doesn't actually matter, as long as you're consistent, which ones are which, because the gate is going to only open for the one that is being requested. And so as long as you have a belt that has a uniform, shape on it, they can then be selected to fill in the quad. So it's the same basic principle as I was using over here. You've got 4 belts, and then whatever is being requested gets forwarded to the rest of the Make Anything machine. Now I've got 10 more of those over here, and so that required quite the belt structure. So here's another thing that complicates matters. So I want one of each to be on call for each one of these quads. So that means I've got to deliver that to not just 4 platforms here, but 16 platforms here, because each one needs its own supply. So that was kind of a fun exercise in belt management. But they all are getting delivered through these belts here. All right. Now this assembly over here is what takes the raw quads and then puts them into the correct order on the belts. So I will just take, it takes 3. So there's 3 right here, and that takes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different shapes, because that's basically what you have. So those 10 shape inputs are going to arrange those shapes into their proper spots to fulfill the requirements of the input to the Make Anything machine um, portals, if you will. All right, and you can kind of look through there to see that that's what's going on. And of course, I had a lot of shapes, so I might as well just make sure they're all being used. So there's 3 stacks doing the exact same thing. And then the belts cruise over here. Now, you can't put mixed shapes on a train platform, a loader. It'll only take pure shapes. All right. So if you've got 10 different belts or 10 belts with 10 different shapes on them, it won't go onto a loader. At least I can't figure out how. It just won't. Anyway, so they have to be transported basically with space belts once you subdivide them like that. So once they've been subdivided, they show up. And then the save's going to happen. They show up at the individual quads in this configuration. So I've got all 10 of them there. All right, so that was basically the only hurdle that had to be done. Well, it wasn't the only hurdle. The other hurdle was that prior to this, in order to figure out what shape was being delivered, these are all northeast quadrant uncolored shapes. And so I would use for my logic over here just a simple shape analyzer to get the right shape out, and then that would open up the gate for the shape, because the shape analyzer always outputs to the northeast quadrant of whatever the input is, and it's always uncolored because the color goes out a different way. But when you're working with the factory shapes, it doesn't do that. You can't use this because it doesn't give you the shape. It just doesn't work. So you have to use a different method. And so I use this method. You're actually basically cutting it in to quarters to get the actual shape you want. So we have to match the shape and color in order to open these gates over here. So we need to keep the shape intact. And so by cutting it, turning it, cutting it, turning it, we can leave whatever shape is in that northeast quadrant, which is where all these are, and that will open the appropriate gate just by a match. See, these are all connected together. It looks busy, but that was the most compact way I could do it. Remember, I had to fit these on existing platforms, and I didn't have a whole lot of space, so I was actually pretty proud of myself to get it all contained in a small area like that. I'll kind of zoom in and on a little bit more if you like, just to get a feel for it, using the what do you call these things? Wireless senders and receivers helped out a lot to keep it compact. That way the individual wires weren't trying to run through the entire thing. So if you're curious, you can kind of look at how that looks as you stack up. Anyhow, it's all in the blueprints if you want. So once I figured out how to analyze or do a comparison for these shapes, get the shapes to the platform, almost all the rest of the logic was unchanged because it really just treats them the exact same as any other shapes. And so that was the biggest hurdle to getting the factory shapes integrated into the quad-based Make Anything machine. And I used again the little test shape platform here with an output to make most of those. You can see some of them kind of left over from when I was making them. And of course it's still compatible with pins and crystals, so no loss of function that way, because some of those jobs required both crystals and the newer shapes. So the standard board for disassembling the shape into its 4 layers would still work, and after letting it chug for a while, we managed to get all of the new jobs. All of these jobs were successfully created with the quad-based MaM. Now you see the one exception right here. They threw that last little sucker in there just to mess with me, and that was this guy right here. So the Achilles heel of the quad-based construction methods are these swappers at the end, and so they're very powerful. But when you're doing the swapper operations, a lot of times things can fall. All right, and so you get a shape that's unsupported. It drops down to the lower level, and then you don't have the proper shape at the end. Now, to mitigate that, you can use the swappers in different configurations. Um, and sometimes one of these will work where the other ones won't. It's really inelegant, but it works. And it can extend the utility of your swapping operations by using this. So anyhow, what did I do for that last shape? Well, I had to come down here and bail out to my layer based one in order to make that last silly shape. So again, I brought all of the shapes down here by belt because again, can't get the stuff on a train once it's been subdivided into individual belts like that. And then I had to break out. This is what the original uh, layer-based MaM looks like with its shape delivery platforms and trains and colors on the bottom. Fortunately, with a little bit of head scratching, I was able to, or I got lost, I was able to integrate the new shapes into a platform. Let me see if I can get this the way I want it. Take that, basically all that. Okay. And I'll just copy that and bring it over here. We can take a look at it real quick. All right, so this is what the new shape distributor looks like. Took a hit on latency, but that's okay. I was really only making one shape, so I did all this just to make one shape, but I was bound and determined to get a MaM to make every shape in the job menu. So this part remains unchanged. This is where the shape selector, this is a low latency version to where all the gates are very close to where these shapes are actually used instead of where they come in. That helped tremendously to reduce latency. So this gives every shape an opportunity to be on every lane. And then I had to basically make another version of that for the factory shapes. So another gate complex here, 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 and here, each representing one of the possible places that shape could be. So 10 shapes on each possible, 10 possible shapes on each lane, all coming together here to be possibly integrated um, onto the shape quad. So the layer based one makes an entire layer at once. And so you got to have all 4 lanes populated per layer. And so that got a little bit more messy. So here we go. That's it. And it managed, to my surprise and relief, that it managed to fit in. Come on, man. I don't want to hide those anymore. I find myself getting stuck behind layers so much. Anyway, enough crabbing around. So now I've got they managed to fit in here just by barely. So again, the main logic board's virtually unchanged because the factory shapes behave well with painters and crystallizers. They don't really do anything if they accidentally go through one, and they don't stall them. So no problem there. Once I did that, it went ahead and kicked out that last shape. I'll tell you, the layer-based ones that are tolerant to pins and tolerant to crystals work very well, and they're pretty quick getting out new shapes. But it's very difficult, for me at least, to create a layer-based MaM that will do both all pins and all crystals. That's just kind of a bridge too far for me. So this one managed to make the shapes that I was lacking off of the job menu. And between this, this is based on the Operator Zero one that specializes in pins, I think. Or is this one that's, yeah, this is the one that specializes in pins. It managed to make that last shape just fine. If I'd have had to make one with crystals, I would have had to modify my Op1 layer-based MaM, which this one specializes in crystals, but at the detriment of not being very good at pins. So it's kind of funny. I basically have 4 really, 4 different MaMs. I'll say 3. The 2 layer-based ones, one that specializes in pins, one that specializes in crystals, and then a MaM that does pistols and wow, I can't even say that, crystals and pins, but sometimes fails based due to swapper operations. So between the two, uh, I said three, but really I'm just talking about two now. Between the quad based make anything machine that's been expanded to include the factory shapes, and the layer based one that I created just to kind of clean up a couple of random shapes, I've managed to do all the jobs, and really that pretty much finishes up the hard level for me. Now, where do I go from here? Boy, I wish there was a way to open up an insane level without having to go through all the grunt work of doing all the milestones and everything, because I really want to try these MAMs on insane and expand them out to 5 levels just to say that I can make any shape, any traditional shape in the game. I'm not going to mess with the hex shapes. That's just too much fussiness for me to deal with. But I would like to try these MAMs out on insane because they can make everything in the job menu, and they're not really struggling with the operator stuff. So I'd like to experiment with these on insane and get them working with the 5 level. But it may take me a while because, man, I really have to. I don't really have a great feeling about slogging through the milestones and everything to get everything opened up on insane. So may or may not do that. But for right now, that is the pretty much what I wanted to cover in this video. And yeah, you guys, if you want, I'll save these as blueprints and post them. Not many people watch these videos. I understand that, but if you're interested, just throw me a comment and a like if you don't mind. And if we can email or whatever, I'll send you the blueprints or even tag them onto this thing. But I'm not going to bother with it unless people actually ask for it. A couple guys haven't. I've just sent them to them offline. But if there's any interest, just let me know and I'll totally throw them to you. All right, thanks guys. Appreciate you watching. Talk to you later.